Hey everyone, welcome back to Threes to Wound. My name's Reese, and today we're going to be doing something that's been long overdue, and that's make a video and talking about kill teams. So today we're going to break down the Kasrkin, a team I'm playing a little bit at the moment. I'm going to do my best to start a good conversation about a team that might need a little bit of a boost. Let's jump in. So I've been playing the Kasrkin in a narrative campaign at the moment. So I played these guys mainly because I thought the models were really cool. I love the look. And I thought, looking at initially, first glance at the rules, they looked like they had a bit of good stuff going on. They're a team that's a little bit maligned at the moment. Not everyone is happy with them. They've got some great benefits, but they've also got a few drawbacks as well. And I guess in the competitive scene or those top tables, they are lagging behind a little bit. There's definitely some players out there, though, that are doing good. So if you are a Kasrkin player, remember rule of cool. Every team is viable in the hands of a player if you play them right. So today we're going to do a bit of a man reads book, step through each of the different parts of the Kasrkin, see if I can impart a little bit of my personal experience or knowledge into that team that might give you a little bit of a tip. But also, it's all about creating a conversation around a team we are all enjoying playing, or maybe want to jump in and play. So I'm really encouraging everyone below to use the comment section here to create some really positive vibes, talk about this team, get a bit of chatter going, drop your tips, your hints, and make this a little bit of a hub where people can come and get some knowledge. Because in my, searching and Googling around, there isn't a whole bunch around about this team at the moment. So this is our opportunity to create something cool. So let's just start kicking it off and have a look at the team. So for the Kasrkin, they've got three archetypes that they can do, which are recon, security, and seek and destroy. We all know that there's been the critical ops package which has come out, and obviously for those who are able to get a set, it does change up some of the archetypes and obviously the viability of some more than others. Seek and Destroy was always a really potent choice in the old ones. In the newer ones, the Critical Ops has definitely done a great job of balancing them a little bit, making some of the other ones a little bit more viable as well. I've got a little bit of a soft spot for security here because the Kasrkin are encouraged with some of their strategic and tac ploys of picking locations, moving up to objectives, and holding areas once they've got them. I definitely think there's a little bit of play here with security. Seek and Destroy, though, is a great one if you just want to focus on getting those heavy weapons and those gunners shooting and killing. You will definitely kill people with this team, but just be aware you are a bit of a glass cannon as well. And as the game goes on and your elite points start to run down, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this video, once they start to run down, you are a team that is hitting on fours. Another thing we'll discuss a little bit more when we get to the data sheets. But let's look at the composition of the team. You're always going to start with 10 operatives on your roster, and there's not too much wiggle room or too much things I think you'll change, apart from going, well, I want to take all or most of the specialists. You've obviously got your leader operative, who's a no-brainer. You're obviously taking that. Then you're selecting another 9 operatives from a bit of a list of specialists and gunners. You have a whole bunch of gunner options, including a sharpshooter, but you can only take a maximum of 4 of those. So picking the ones that work best for you if you're not really planning on building a whole roster, but just a kill team or what you're building out of the one box set, which for most people is good. This is a 1-box kill team. You can get 1 box, and you can build up a really effective and functional team. You don't need to have to bring in some extra parts, bits and pieces. So hey, that's a win right there. The common ability for the Kasrkin is the elite points. And so basically this is a pool of points that you can spend to manipulate a maximum of 1 dice from a close combat attack roll or a shooting roll. So basically you can spend points to turn a 1 into a 6 if you wanted to, or a 1 into just a hit, taking it up to a 4. It's very important to know that in any roll, though, you can only adjust 1 dice. So you can't spend lots of points across multiple dice. It is just 1, and that is something that does limit this ability from being a real A-class or S-tier ability, because these guys are hitting on a 4. So that's where you really need to make sure that you use your elite points wisely. So sometimes maybe instead of getting an extra hit, just spending 1 point to nudge a 5 into a critical. and then relying on other strategic and tactical ploys or unit abilities to guarantee other hits or find other ways to manipulate dice as well. 10 points isn't a lot, and it does go quick. It does mean you can have a really great first 2 turns where you can really hit like a truck, making sure that melter guns, plasma guns are basically going to be undefeated. There's nothing you can do. And they already do that well. That even turning your basic hotshot las guns into real unit killers because they hit like a bolter with a 3-4. And all of a sudden, if you can be guaranteeing you're getting more crits, you're making them go through. There's even stratagems to turn those into P1 as well. So taking away save dice. But it does require a bit of synergy, and it does require you to have a little bit of a strategy with how you want to spend those points and when it's important to, and when maybe it would just be nice to be able to manipulate those dice. Unlike a lot of other teams that can just straight out generate things where they can guarantee hits or they just take a dice out of the pool, this is a limited time thing. It will run out. You will run out of those points. And there's not too many ways to regenerate more, which is probably where I think if the Kasrkin were to get a boost, I think there needs to be other ways, maybe through parts of the game or things you can do in-game, maybe sacrificing a unit's AP or something to generate some more elite points would be really good. Your leader is the only other operative that generates them for you, and once they die, that's it for elite points, and then you're really just running a guard team or, it really feels a bit like a compendium team where you've lost this overarching theme for your team. So just something to be, aware of. But there's definitely some great play. But yeah, making sure you keep track of those, spending them at the right moments to maximize their effect, to guarantee kills, to make it that the opponent can't make saves, can be really beneficial for your team. We'll have a look at each of the data sheets of each of the units here, and we're going to do our best to make it so it's not too much of a man reads book, but there will be a little bit of that, and then it'll be me basically adding my thoughts and experiences from playing this team and what I found with them. So for the Sergeant, a guy that's always going to be on your team, I like to keep it simple. He can take a plasma pistol, he's going to take a plasma pistol. He also gets the chainsword with that as well, which unlike some other teams where you do see if they take the plasma pistol, they've got to take a bit of a lower tier close combat weapon. I think the chainsword's got a bit of play. 4 attacks, hitting on a 3+, 4/5 damage, and it's got ceaseless. So this guy's definitely no slouch in close combat, but the thing to remember about your whole team is they are guardsmen. This guy's got 8 wounds, everyone else has 7, and it does not take much for these guys to die. So, close combat is not really something you're wanting to push this guy into. It's more as a fallback. He's got some defense there if he needs it, but realistically, this is all about the plasma pistol. For me, this unit's all about staying alive during the game, and then I use him quite aggressively in the last 2 turning points where I'm not really relying on that leadership ability, which is what gives you the 2 elite points each turn. So this guy early on, you've got to keep him safe. You've got to keep him alive because he is your elite point generator. And it means it keeps a plasma pistol up in your back pocket for later in the game. So a bit more aggressively capturing some objectives, clearing off some chaff, whatever it is, this guy can definitely pack a bit of a surprise punch. And if you do play him a little bit cagey, you keep him, out of trouble for a while, your opponent can kind of sleep on him a little bit. And then when units are injured, units are down on their luck a little bit later in the game, this guy can come in and really put on some hurt. Unlike a lot of other leader models though, you did see it there, he's hitting on 3s. So although this is not bad, hitting on 3s is good for most other guys. On your leaders, this can mean with some plasma pistol shenanigans, if you're wanting to overcharge, you need to be careful. And this is where your elite points can really help with plasma to make sure, you don't blow yourself up in your moment of glory. It's happened to the best of us, I know. So that's it really for the Sergeant. He's a bit of a no-nonsense character. He says what he does on the tin, and that's the big thing about most of this team. There isn't too much hidden depth around a lot of the other things they do. The synergies are very much like a lot of, veteran guard, other guard teams. They are stronger as a team. They're the sum of their parts that each of these pieces needs to be working together. Individually, they are all okay. 4-up saves is better than most of your guardsmen, better than a lot of the average sort of units in the game. that is really powerful, but just be careful of teams that do have lots of AP1, weaponry. Necrons, I'm looking at you. In my narrative campaign, you've toasted a lot of guardsmen because all of a sudden, AP1, 2 dice, and, 1 or 2 failed saves, against a good shooting team will take that operative out of battle. And it's amazing how quickly your team can whittle away if you're not careful about that. Now we've got the combat medic. Medics are always a great thing to have in your team. The main reason you definitely wouldn't leave the medic at home, apart from his healing ability, is he's also basically just a regular lasgun trooper as well. So in a pinch, he shoots and fights just as good as all the other Kasrkin models out there, but he's got that ability. And these are very similar to what we've seen with medics across all other teams. They can bring someone back to life if they die within square of them, and they can also heal units within their turning point. I would personally, with this guy, there's 2 ways I look at him. I'm either aggressive with him, keeping him up with the units I'm using to put pressure up there. So things that I might like to come back to life if they don't get their chance to shoot, or if I want to make sure that I can heal that forward line pressure up as we keep going. So keeping him around a melter gun, for instance, or your plasma gun. The other option, though, is also just around, those swing units, or the units that the tech units of your team that keep things moving. So the comms guy in this team is very, very important. So him and the medic forming a little bit of a unit headquarters, if you will, keeping everyone alive can be a good idea, or even near the leader so you don't lose your elite points. Don't forget, again, later in the game, he's still, he's got a las gun. He's still a man who can shoot. Don't be afraid, especially late game, to use him in that capacity to plink off those last few wounds, to get a bit more aggressive with him, because you don't want to have had him sit out sideline for the whole game. This isn't a team with only 10 models. You can't really afford to have too many models sitting out the whole game. So I prefer a little bit more of an aggressive approach with him, because it gives him a bit more use in the team. I don't feel like he was wasted otherwise. Next up, we've got the Demo Trooper. This guy is one of my favorites in the team because there's a lot of different models that have mines and things that they can put to close up the battlefield. But the big thing here with this guy's mine is it is proximity. So once you place it, it's just all about area denial. So it really can give you some great battlefield control, getting this guy up the board early, getting him to put that bomb on an objective, near a doorway, near a key piece of terrain. There's so many options with this guy that can sort of help limit teams' abilities to want to push to that flank or push along that side of the board. So in a lot of ways, that proximity mine can sort of hold a whole flank by itself if you get it there at the right time and in the right spot. It's strong enough. It's a very powerful weapon. 4 attacks, hitting on 2s, 4/2 damage, but then it's also doing 3 mortal wounds on the crit, which is really, really powerful. And it's AP2. So there's not too many units in the game, Legionaries, Intercession, Custodes, that can really tank this. So teams are either going to have to sacrifice a model, which is great. That's a win for you. It's them losing a model for you losing a token. Or they're really going to have to keep avoiding it. So there's really some great ploys depending on what the mission objective is. I often, at the start of the game, will do everything I can to get this guy pushing up the board as quick as possible. So using your starter game dash, if you want to take that in the scouting phase, just to start setting him up to getting him underway to where he needs to go. He's also a great target for the comms guy to use their buff 1 to his AP, because again, move, dash, drop your mine, things like that, or move, drop the mine, dash back into cover. So there's a little bit to be said, and a few ways to synergize with your team to get him up the board as quick as possible and get him into that danger spot. He's also got blast padding, so very hurt locker here, and that's going to let him have some rerolls against blast. It also helps him ignore splash as well. So a good thing to think about with a guard team, 10 models, if you've got lots of guys having to bunch up early in the game, at least this can give him a little bit of survivability. Also helps if he gets caught in the range of his own mine as well. At least he has a little bit more of a chance of surviving. Not much, but a little bit more. The last thing to be aware of with this guy, and it's not a huge thing, with his main weapon, it is a pistol. So just be aware it's only got the pentagon range. I don't think it changes too much. This guy's here to drop his bomb. And then once he does, I'm basically pretty happy for him to die after that if he does. But just be aware, obviously a bit more limited range. Now we come to the Kasrkin gunner. These guys are the core of your team because you can have a lot of them, especially compared to a lot of other teams. You get a lot of gunner operatives in this team. If you're not taking the sharpshooter, you can have 4 weapon options. If you are taking the sharpshooter, which I usually do, you're picking 3. We always know the flamer has definitely gone up in value a little bit more in things like Into the Dark, but for me, it's usually a bit of a hard pass. Rule of Cool would mean I'd take it, but in terms of when I want a team that I hopefully can win with, I'm leaving it at home. I think the toughest choice for me here is between the hotshot volley gun and then there's also the grenade launcher. That's the one for me that I'm always a little bit on the fence about. I like the hotshot volley gun, but only, doing the AP on crits means it can be a bit swingy. There's manipulation with elite points, but I don't know. Whereas the grenade launcher, I think, having that duality of having the frag and the crack grenades, being able to do damage in those 2 ways is pretty powerful. It's also got, obviously, unlimited range, unlike things like the melter as well. So I think for me, that's the debate. Unfortunately, when I built it, I just thought the hotshot volley gun was cool, and I went with that. But I should have known that that wasn't the right choice when I saw that special rule, Fusillade. Doesn't do anything. Come on. That's the worst. It's the worst rule in the game. I probably wish I had have gone with the grenade launcher, but I don't want to pull the guy apart. It's already painted him, so it's just going to have to be that way. The other 2, obviously the plasma and the melter gun. There's definitely some people who might not like the melter gun as well because it does force you to push up and be a lot more aggressive with. But again, there's definitely some ploys and reasons that you're going to want to have at least a few operatives pushing aggressively towards objectives, and melter guns are great at just clearing people off there, including really high wound models as well. Just remember, these guys have amazing weapons. They are still guardsmen. They've got 7 wounds, only 4 up armor save, so they do need to be careful. So it's all about making sure that at very least they trade up, that they're taking out something that is worth more than them before they bite the bullet. Otherwise, sometimes it's worth keeping them alive and making sure you are getting a good trade for them. A lot of the time they'll pop out, shoot. That might be their one chance. The Kasrkin Recon Trooper is another one a little bit like the Medic. It's a specialist you should always just take because it's a free upgrade. He's still a basic trooper underneath it, but he's got a couple of cool little rules to go with it. His first ability is Raconteur Kill Zone. So basically, this means you get to pick a second thing to do in the strategy phase. So you can, the powerful thing about this though is you can also pick the same one twice. So you want to place down 2 barricades, you can. You want to have 2 units in your team do a dash, you can. There is definitely a little bit of play with this, and I talked earlier about using the mine layer to take advantage of that free dash. So there's also a little bit, if you want to, of manipulation of taking the initiative. If you're pretty confident, you know what your opponent is going to do. If you know they're going to take the free dash, you could also, therefore, play the game, use your first choice to give yourself the initiative, so picking the choice that would give you that, and then using this second one to actually take the one you want. So hypothetically, if taking the barricade, which you don't really care about, is going to win you the initiative, take that and then use your free one to then do the thing that you want, which could be a dash, could be, changing an order in the first turn, whatever it is. So there's a little bit of caginess or duality of purpose with this one. It's not just about using it to get free stuff. There's also a little bit of initiative manipulation at the start of the game. So just be aware of that. It's really handy. The next one is the Warden Auspex. Now, this costs him 1 AP to do, but effectively you can pick an enemy operative and they lose cover, and it also synergizes with a few of your other strategic and tactical ploys as well. The really strong part of this, though, is you don't need to be able to see the other operative. There's no line of sight shenanigans. There's no distance on this. That guy just gets to go, that enemy operative, no cover. So this can actually be really powerful, especially with, your a lot of your hotshot weapons not having AP innately. This can make a big difference to all of a sudden meaning that your enemy's having to roll a lot of their saves. You're putting a bit more pressure on even your basic weapons. Elimination pattern and neutralize target are the ploys that this also sort of synergizes with, and those have little caveats that if they're, they either have more of a chance of success, or can only be done if the enemy operative doesn't have cover. So this synergizes with that. That basically allows those to go off or meets that criteria for the targeted operative. So again, I have been not great at playing this one. I've forgotten this a lot to use that, because there are some of the strategic and tactical ploys that sometimes you do go, geez, there's quite a few boxes to tick before that can be viable or useful. This is a great little one if you can remember it to make them a little bit more achievable. The sharpshooter is one of my favorite operatives because I think all teams should have a sharpshooter. They should have a sniper of some description. This guy's great in that he's got two different profiles. So he's got one that he can use when he's moving his full range, so moving up, getting in position. If he's not in conceal, he can still be an option to shoot. Or it's great late game if he needs to be making a mad dash out of an annoying position you put him in all game. All of a sudden, he can still move and still impact the game later on, not getting stuck out of position for the whole time. So a really useful operative, but he makes his money when he is in conceal and he's in an annoying spot. So if that's in ITD, in a great spot with guard on, where he's looking after a whole corridor or a whole part of the Space Hulk by himself, or on open board on a vantage point in some cover and just being a real nuisance. He hits really, really hard in that sniping profile. 4 attacks, the big one, hitting on 2s, and then it's 3/3 damage, but crits are the mortal wound 3, and that's where this guy earns his money. So getting those mortal wounds through against a lot of teams out there that do have things that ignore damage, extra ways to negate things. The mortal wounds are a really great way to guarantee you are getting damage through. So using your elite points again to make sure, bumping up another one to a crit. So hopefully, you're going to get 2 to 3 crits. What's a quit? 2 or 3 crits per shooting round if you can bump one up with some elite points and hopefully innately roll some. Then again, let's be honest, if it's me rolling the dice, I'm lucky if I haven't rolled 4 ones. But still, the theory and the principle is definitely sound. The camo cloak is a piece of equipment or an ability that this guy's got that a lot of snipers have, and that's basically all about staying alive. If you're in cover, it's an extra dice retained, so basically keeping 2 of those saves is really, really powerful. Keeping a low wound model alive for longer is always a benefit, keeping him in their little safe sniper hidey hole. The Vox Trooper is another really, really important guy. I'd say close to the most important member of your team, just because of their ability. They have battle comms, which costs 1 AP to do, and it's very similar to a lot of other comms operators. It lets you buff up another unit in your team's APL. But the reason it's powerful is there's no range restriction whatsoever, no required line of sight. They can just do it to any of your units on the battlefield, no matter where they are. And they can do it twice, or as many APL as they have, so twice. This is a big team because it does effectively, I guess you lose 1 operative, but it's turning 2 of your guys into 3 APL operatives. And in this case, that's huge because, you're not you are a horde team in some ways, but also you've got elite elements. So at least having some guys that can feel like they are that with the 3 APL per turn, a plasma gun being able to move, dash, shoot, your demo guy. There's some units that can really take advantage of this, especially also too with some of your ploys that you want to play where you are wanting to push up, sit on objectives and stuff like that. Getting that little bit of extra movement or being able to get there, this guy's a real linchpin. Fundamentally, underneath it, he's just like all the other regular boys. He's still got all the normal stats. He's still got his hot shot volley gun. So again, later game, maybe once you've got him to utilize his APL bonus for the first 2 turns, you can start to get a bit more aggressive with him, using him to push down and back up some teammates. But for me, this guy is staying out of trouble for as long as possible. Lastly, it's just your regular Joe Trooper, and you will have one of these guys in your team once you've added all the gunner operatives and you've done you've dropped in everything else you can. You will take one of these, and they're good. Their stats overall aren't bad. The thing that does hurt them, though, is that hitting on 4s. It can just bring a real element of swinginess, but that applies to your whole team. You can roll super hot all game and then have some real clutch moments where you can't hit the side of a barn door. So just be aware, these guys are good when they hit, but you will have some moments that make you cry a bit. They do have one benefit that I really like. It's as an elite trooper, basically they do get to spend one elite point each time they shoot close combat, whatever, for free. So manipulating one of your dice without having to dig into your elite points pool is definitely very, very handy. Again, it can be the difference between a miss and a hit or a miss and a crit. So even late game when you might not have points, these guys do have a little bit of practicality to use that as well. So I still don't think you'd ever find you're taking one of these guys over a specialist. I don't think that's enough of a strength to lose out on the other abilities that you get. But it's a handy little thing and it's for free. So take it. Time to look at the equipment for the Kasrkin, and I definitely feel this is probably one of the areas that is the most disappointing about this team. I really find I'm hard pressed to find more than two things that I think are worthwhile on this. So many teams have little extra benefits like just being able to add one to their armor save or more to their wounds, and especially with this team, that might be something that would really help. A lot of these things can help, but are a bit situational or require a bit of relying on the dice gods to make them work. And I'm not a huge fan of that, especially in clutch moments where you are relying on another 4+ roll, I should say, to get what you need. Not ideal. First up, it's the foregrip 1 equipment point. This lets you ignore the modifier to your ballistic skill when shooting Overwatch, which does sound really, really good, except when you remember you are a 10 operative team. So against a lot of matchups, you're not going to be shooting too much Overwatch, or you might only late in the game when things have probably already gone haywire. So I don't mind this, but it is restricted again to hotshot guns in your team. So that again limits its usability a little bit in that sense as well. It's okay. It's only 1 equipment point. You can put it on a lot of you guys. A lot of your team are carrying them, but it's okay. The long range scope is one that I thought was quite good straight out of the box, but actually it wasn't until later on I realized it was better than initially thought. If a target's further than Pentagon away and you get a crit when shooting at them, you get to add no cover, which is really, really handy. And on the sniper, it's a bit of a no-brainer. Anything that's going to help push through that damage is really, really good. But you can also equip it on your regular hotshot guys as well. And that's why I think it becomes a bit more potent. Those guys are, generally speaking, if things are going right, you're far away from close combat, you're going to be using that range anyway. So anything that takes away no cover, stops your opponent getting cheeky ways to block your shots going through is always a bonus. And at only 2 equipment point, it's pretty reasonable. The adrenaline shot, 1 equipment point, is another one that I actually don't mind. Your guys have 7 wounds. They're going to get wounded. They're going to get injured. So anything that can basically help you ignore those modifiers to your ballistic skill and your movement, primo, especially late game where you might be struggling a bit. 1 equipment point's really, really reasonable. Lets you ignore that, and all of a sudden doesn't mean you're hitting on 5s. Think about that, hitting on 5s. So make sure you have a few of these, especially great on your heavy weapons. I won't talk too much about the grenades. We know what the grenades do. They're pretty good. There's no reason not to take them. The frag and the crack variants are there. They definitely both have their place. And if you're familiar with them, there's no reason you shouldn't be taking them on your team. You already know what they do. The next 2, though, we've got some grenades that are a bit different. We've got the decoy and the stun. The decoy grenade effectively has the ability to turn off guard and overwatch for your opponent, whereas the other one, the stun, basically does that. It stuns your opponent. There's a positive with these grenades that they can get more than 1 operative, which is really, really powerful. Very similar to the grenades now in the hand of the Archon team, where you can pick an area and it's getting lots of operatives. So it could be really powerful if you get it to go off. The catch, though, is that it's on a 4+, so still 50-50 chance on each of those operatives, so good chance to whiff. And it also gets 1 worse if they're not visible to you as well. So I'm leaving these at home most of the time, only because I think things like the scope and the adrenaline shot are probably easier to use, a more direct application, whereas these 2 feel a little bit too conditional. They can be great. I'm not saying a good player, aka not me, might use these to massive effect, but for me, I'm leaving them in the bag. Now we're going to have a quick look at the strategic ploys, and there's some pretty good ones here, but again, they do require a little bit of thinking ahead, a little bit of synergy to make sure that you're maximizing the usage of these and you're not wasting the command points that are very precious. This first one, elimination pattern, is quite good. It basically means that if you're shooting at a target that is not in cover, you're actually adding P1 to a hotshot weapon profile. Mind you, that is the P1 critical rule, so it means it's obviously only on a crit are you actually setting that off. So really important to remember that it's not an auto, and there's rules, that you've got to, and things you've got to complete to make it work, which is, i.e. the target not being in cover. And I don't know about you guys, but with how my friends and my group of play, it's not that often that you catch too many operatives with their pants down in this way. Them as players sometimes pants down, but that's just who they are as people. This can be powerful though in the right hands, especially against horde teams, lower wound teams. This can really be the difference between finishing off a model and doing maximum damage. And you do have quite a few operatives with the hotshot weapons, and it does include the sniper or the marksman operative, as long as he's not using the snipe profile. So just his regular shooting profile can still take advantage of this. This is the first of the strategic ploy as well that also works with your recon trooper's ability as well. So a great way to make this even more effective is obviously pick a high priority target, make them not in cover using his ability, and then this all of a sudden becomes a lot more powerful. So there's definitely some utility with this one, but you've just got to make sure if and how you use it that you have a clear target or something very in particular that you think you'll get the maximum usage out of this. Otherwise, it could be, it's not really worth it for just one operative to maybe ignore cover. There really needs to be 2 or 3 key operatives, or really on an important target they're trying to shift off an objective or something like that. Safeguard is 1 CP, as all these strategies are. I probably should have said that at the top. They're all only 1 CP. Safeguard is, well, it like the name suggests, it helps to keep your guys alive, allowing you to reroll 1s on your saves. This is pretty handy. You've already got a pretty beefy 4-up save, which is good for a guard equivalent. Adding reroll to 1s, fingers crossed this is going to help make you keeping those operatives around for a little bit longer. So I definitely like this one, especially in those early turns. This can help protect you from maybe a few placement mistakes or those accidental feel bad moments at the start where you didn't quite get your deployment right. Clearance sweep is another one that's all about pushing your Kasrkin forward and making them more powerful as they do that. So as the name would suggest, clearance sweep, you're using this to help clear enemies out, either out of cover, out of a key area, off an objective or whatever. So it's basically letting you use a free elite point when you're targeting a unit within the token that you're placing down. It's 2 circle, but also you and the person you're shooting at must be within that 2 circle sphere, I guess. So just keep that in mind. This is definitely one you're going to need to use in conjunction with, again, a target in mind. Is it an objective? Is it something you're trying to push? It's a great way later in the game to give yourself some elite points if you are battling a little bit. 1 CP does seem very expensive for this though. I'm not sure if I've found myself using this one a whole bunch. Reposition is definitely a strategic ploy I've got a little bit more time for. It basically means you can select an operative and then other operatives within blue or square of that operative, and then they can make a free dash. The caveat being, can't use it in the first turn. So this would be super powerful in the first turn, able to push a whole bunch of guys really fast up the table. They're onto us. They're not going to allow us to do that. But this can be a really powerful one in the second turn. I've used this to great effect in Into the Dark, when naturally your units are going to be a little bit more bunched up in corridors or heading towards doorways. So this is a great way to sneak a little bit more movement heading into another turn. Obviously you're doing this at the start of the turn. And this could mean you changing the position of those operatives, where they can be, and maybe even changing some of the ranges your opponent had sort of measured out defensively, thinking they maybe was safe, couldn't be charged, couldn't be shot. So this can definitely shift that dynamic. But again, like most of these strategic ploys, there has to be a little bit of thought into it to make sure that those operatives are within that range to get maximum benefit out of it. I think the strategic ploys are a little underwhelming for this team, and I think this is probably a theme that also follows on a little bit into the tactical ploys as well. There's just not a whole bunch of punch that makes you feel that you can execute and use these and make a really big impact. There's definitely small impacts you can have on the game. Using reposition at the right time can be really, really clutch. Safeguard's great, keeping your guys alive, but nothing that really seems to be like an auto take or you are using this every turn no matter what, like we see with Legionaries and some of the other teams that they've just got some tac ploys that is a no-nonsense, I'm doing it every turn because I'd be silly not to. And that's probably a little bit disappointing for these guys. Cover retreat is an interesting one. And basically, if you've got an operative within Pentagon of another operative who's locked into combat, they can fall back for 0 AP, which is handy. I do like that, but it kind of feels like a lot of the time when an opponent's going to get in close combat with your guy, you're probably not surviving. So this comes up probably more often when it's a case of they've just locked you up or they've tried to slow you down or hold up your operative, that you might find this is actually quite handy. To be honest though, I don't think I've used this once, if I'm being honest, because if my guys are in close combat or the enemy gets up that close, my guys are either usually dead or I've made a big mistake anyway. And the last thing I want to do is then have another operative in that Pentagon range who could also potentially end up in that same trouble. There are options then obviously to expose that operative who has tried to lock you up. Obviously you've got 2 operatives there now who can obviously look at putting the hurt on that guy. It may come up, it just hasn't for me yet. I'd be interested to know if anyone out there has made a lot of use of this. Neutralized target is one I find myself using a little bit, and this is basically all about punishing a model who's already had their activation. So if it's a model is either not ready, has an engaged token, or is not in cover, you can re-roll all of your attack dice. Again, there's a few caveats there for this to work to maximum effect, but when you're hitting on 4s, re-rolling all of your attack dice is really good. And this is also a great counter punch to an opponent who's obviously made a more aggressive move. Have they moved up and charged when your operatives killed them, left themselves exposed? This is a great way to guarantee that, say, even a hotshot lasgun can take down a tougher opponent or at least really put the hurt on them. So I find this very much as a counter ploy. That's the best way to look at it. That, you could find that maybe you've baited them out using your demo trooper after he's played their mine and you've got them to commit. It does rely, in my opinion, on your opponent making a little bit of a mistake. They've put themselves out there and are in a little bit of trouble. So this is all about just maximizing that mistake and making sure you do punish your opponent for it. Seize the initiative. Guess what this does? This lets you just re-roll the initiative roll. For 1 CP, this is really handy and one that I definitely find myself having a go at a lot. It's amazing how often that initiative turn or that first activation, how important that is, how crucial that is to getting either keeping one of your operatives alive or punishing an opponent straight away, getting onto an important objective straight away, whatever it is. This is definitely always worthwhile. The catch being it's 1 CP, but as I said, I still find at times CP isn't a huge concern with this team because I don't think they're that CP hungry. And I don't find myself throwing the CP around all over the show. So give this one a go, especially on those really crucial ones. It's still a roll-off. It also probably depends if your opponent rolled a 6. And unless you know that had the turn last turn, there is a little bit of thinking about what are your odds, what are the chances of doing it. But it's still pretty good, this one. For Cadia. Now, this one is definitely thematic. It's definitely speaking to all the Cadian firstborn out there, the true sons, and it's going down fighting. If you do find yourself in close combat, or you do find that you have to charge for whatever reason to do something, this is not a bad one. I said it's great because obviously it's making you do more damage in close combat, which is great. You're only hitting with gun butts, so they're a bit miffy. But the big part, I think, is the feel no pain, that 5-up feel no pain. So this is great if you get charged, in a bad situation. Is it a crucial operative? It might not necessarily stop them being damaged, but it might be the difference when they're getting taken out of the game. And then there's options to get them out of there later if you can keep them alive. Cover retreat comes to mind here. 2 CP to maybe save your plasma gun. There's maybe some play there, that's for sure. So just thinking of ways to synergize some of those. That's expensive, but when it's one of your big hitters or one of your important operatives, there's definitely reasons you might want to use this one. So just like the strategic ploys, the tactical ploys are okay. There's, again, no groundbreakers here. I definitely think the seize the initiative and the neutralized target are the stronger of the four there. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on ones you find you're using regularly for both strategic and tactical ploys. But in my experience so far, they're the ones I've found I've used the most. And again, it just feels okay. They're not bad, but they're not great. And as I said, just like the strategic ploys, there's no standout or one that I think every turn is a non-negotiable you're going to use. Which isn't bad because it means your opponent isn't also always predicting that you're going to spend a CP on that. But it does leave you feeling a bit ho-hum during the strategy phase, that's for sure. The Tac Ops for the Kasrkin aren't too bad. There's definitely some synergy between two of them. I find that if you're smart and you really commit to that play style of how you would have to go to play that to get those to work, it's definitely there. But they're all okay again. I like Vital Objective because it's encouraging you to do what you want to do anyway, and that is control objective markers you didn't previously control. So at the start of each of the target stages, you're basically saying, hey, I'm going to get objective number whatever. I don't own it. No one owns it. I'm going to get it this turn, and I'm going to score a victory point. You then will need to do that a second time to score the second victory point. This one's definitely playing into what the Kasrkin want to be doing anyway, which is moving up, getting those bodies on the board, and then sort of doing their best to lock them down. And they're supported with different strategic ploys in that as well that you can use to reinforce this being a viable one. Clearance sweep and neutralize target are two that would definitely work and coincide with picking that objective and going, well, that's the one I'm going to get, and that's going to help me kill those operatives, enemy operatives, if there are any, on those objectives. So that's a great way to look at it as well, is just go, well, not only am I taking that tac op, but how do I get my strategic and tactical ploys to play into it and increase my chances of getting enemy operatives off it? Stand Fast is, I'd say, a mid-tier, kind of to lower tier one. Basically, you have to control 2 objective markers and more objective markers than your opponent. So this is situational as in terms of how good that is. How confident are you that you're going to be able to be getting 2 objective markers? How many objective markers are in play? How many potentially can your opponent be getting as well? Like, is it easy for them to get a 3-2? Is it easy for them to get 2-2? That's the thing that makes this one difficult, is it's not just about what you're doing, it's also then about reducing your opponent's efficiency in terms of claiming and holding objectives as well. And there's multiple ways to do that, just shooting them off their objectives, but without the ability to definitely have lots of backline bandits with your Kasrkin, it's harder to get all the way down the field. We don't have too many movement shenanigans or forward deploy shenanigans. It can be hard to shift your opponent off backfield objectives or objectives that are a long way away. So there is a good chance that this will be, I know you've only got to get it twice, but that's not always going to be as easy as it sounds. At first I thought this was a good one, but I found that it's quite easy once your opponent knows too for them to counter. Secure Zone is the last of them, and this is one that actually works really well in conjunction with Vital Objective. So you can basically put your marker on an enemy operative who's already on an objective, take that objective off them, and score both. So this is a really clever way to get them both working in synergy. The catch being, though, there has to be an enemy operative within that 2-circle distance. So they don't necessarily have to be right on the objective. It can be nearby. You can look at how you can overlap those fields. How much can you get in there? So there's definitely synergy with those. And again, it plays very similar to the other one in terms of the way you can use those same strategic and tactical ploys. So there's definitely a theme in terms of how these guys, at least how GW thinks they should be playing and how they should be operating. I don't think it always necessarily works that well. They're not the best shock troops. They can hit really hard, but then holding and maintaining ground can be difficult for these guys. I find them very susceptible to counterattacks. They're a glass cannon. They can hit really hard, lots of gunner options, but they can't really take a punch. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to be really aggressive, make sure each unit does have backup. Make sure there's you're ready for that model to get wiped and there's someone else to take their place. There's definitely got to be a next man up mentality. Isolated guardsmen will just get killed pretty quickly, and it's just wasted bodies. So that's it. That's all of the, I guess, the book stuff. That's us reading the rules to you and just talking about and discussing how they work. My thoughts are that the Kasrkin are definitely a little bit underpowered at the moment, but it doesn't mean that they're not a good team. It doesn't mean they're not a fun team. You just definitely have to have a little bit of a game plan of how you think you can win the game. And just make sure you do your best to put them in the situations that let them shine. They don't have too many shenanigans with ordering, changing, or anything like that. So it's definitely really a lot about putting time and effort into your placement, using your comms operative to increase guys' APL, which is going to give them longer range, more options, and then obviously each turn really having, I guess, a set target in mind. Is it, I'm going to capture just this one objective, and that's really important that I get that. And then what strategic and tactical ploys and Tac Ops can I tie into that one mission so that in doing that, I'm maximizing the benefit to the team, that I'm doing the most things I can. Using things like your sharpshooter and the mine layer, they can control a lot of ground without actually doing much. Once you get the mine in the spot, that's going to give you some area control. Your sniper can stay and conceal, stay on a vantage point, and just, lock down a whole area. Your opponent's not going to want to go through there because most of them won't be able to tank that kind of damage. Don't forget too, you've got lots of specialists, but fundamentally they are, hotshot lasgun guys at the core. So there are the stratagems that can help give them the P1 on their critical. There are things that you can do to help make them a little bit more damaging. And that's a big mistake I made early with this team, was I treated them just as specialists who had special abilities, but forgot, that they can do damage in the right situation. So don't forget that, because you can make them, they can create a lot of havoc when your opponent's worried about your gunner operatives, or while they are worried about the gunner operatives, hitting them hard with those other guys in ways they're not expecting can really be, can come in handy. We don't have that many sneaky tricks. There's no charging out of conceal. We don't want to be in close combat whatsoever. So it's all about getting your opponent to commit and overcommit and then punishing them for those mistakes. If you're getting in close combat, things are going to go bad. So then it's also about, well, how can we, you kind of nearly got to sacrifice a unit if they get into close combat. Know that they're a little bit of a write-off, and then how can we then isolate the person who has charged them or attacked them? So thinking more of your units in layers and having support while staying outside of blast distance and splash distance of each other as well, but keeping them in the space where they can support each other, that most of the time if an operative is going to shoot at one of your guys or charge them, that you can therefore get two guys to shoot back. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think of this video. Did you get something out of it? Is this something you would like to see more teams? I was sort of having a little bit of a look out there, and there was basically next to nothing on the Kasrkin. I'm sure there's a few out there, but there wasn't that much. So this was one of the teams that I wanted to talk about, and I might do a few more of these of just teams that maybe aren't getting the love on the competitive scene, but as a kill team casual, doesn't mean you can't have fun with them on the table. So if you enjoyed this video, it's really important. Let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, like to the channel, share your thoughts on this team, how you play them. Happy to hear any thoughts. There might be things I'm missing. So it's really important. If you put that in the comments, it's a little bit of a resource for everyone who wants to get better with this team. And let me know what you think they need to be better as well. I'd be very interested to see what the tweak is that would move them up the tiers a bit. I definitely think there's something to do with the elite points. Maybe their strategic or tactical ploys need a little bit more oomph as well. But we'll soon find out. As I said, GW's been doing a pretty good job so far of supporting Kill Team, and that's making me very happy. So I'm sure we'll get some updates soon. Those, tier rankings will change, and that's what we like to see. In the meantime, make sure you check out as well a podcast I do with Ben and Russ from, Ben's from Battle Brothers Tabletop, Russ from GFN Gaming. But yeah, we do a podcast, Kill Team Casuals, talking all things kill team, but very casually. You know, we're not the tip of the sword. We're the Joe Blows down the pub who, you know, talk about how good we used to be. That's us. It's very casual. It's very fun. It's chaotic. And we've also got a channel there as well, Casual War Gamers. Drop by there, give that a bit of a subscribe as well, and you'll never miss an episode. Available where all good podcasts are. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We do a live version on Twitch. We do it live. We're here apparently, but we're not there. Like, oh God, you can hear it. I know. I don't know what happened. Hey, I'm here. It's chaos. It never goes well. I ruin the technical side of things all of the time, but it's hilarious. So, yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again on Threes to Learn.